Angie,
John.
do you prefer a stand-up comedy routine or a bit of improv?
Ooh, I love a good stand-up routine. How about you?
It can be good, but I love the danger and uncertainty of improv too.
Yeah, but it can be a wreck if it doesn't go well, though, right?
Oh, a bit like coaching, really.
But maybe you're coaching.
Oh, thanks. No, I mean, you can be planned or you can be in the moment.
Sounds like a great topic for us. Let's get the show started.
Welcome to the Coaching Clinic with John and Angie, the show for professional coaches that explores the ins and outs of coaching, from working with clients through to running and marketing your coaching business.
If you're a professional coach who's committed to your own personal and professional growth, cares about making a difference, and wants to have a successful coaching business, you're in the right place.
My name's John Ball.
And I'm Angela Bezignano.
Between us, we have over 50 years of coaching experience and best practices to share with you, from getting started to scaling up your business.
We know what works and what doesn't, as well as what it really takes to have a successful and thriving coaching business.
With new episodes every Wednesday.
Make sure you're subscribed to get them fresh.
This is something that's been on my mind for a bunch of years as a coach. So I am glad that we're actually getting to this as a topic on the show today about whether we work with kind of like formulas and structures as coaches or whether we're more intuitive. And I certainly started off my coaching career, my coaching with clients, using formulas and structures and taking people through a particular process that had been taught to me. And then I fairly quickly transitioned to being more intuitive and tuning into what was going on with the clients and maybe what was being said and what wasn't being said and all those kind of things. And I noticed that there's a lot of coaches who fall on one side or the other. There's probably a lot of in between as well. Where do you fall with this, Angie?
Right smack dab in the middle. When I started coaching, it wasn't really framework oriented, but I think I probably set out like an agenda of what I wanted to talk about in terms of keeping a flow and not falling into the weed. And now I guess I've progressed. I look at it as a progression. I progressed into following a framework and sprinkling in, of course, the intuition, right? Because whether you're following a framework or not, you have to be intuitive. You have to be able to not be robotic and have that open flow to a coaching session. I think that's the job of a great coach, in my humble opinion.
I did years ago a series of trainings with another coach, and I would say we had very different styles of coaching. She's very much systematic, formulaic, process driven, and I'm way more out there on the intuitive, listening for things and trying to tune into what's really going on and what you most need. And yeah, we were able to come together very well. And I think it was from her that I first started to see that there was potentially a lot of value, because she was very successful as a coach and very effective. People were getting results with her as well. I think, well, people are getting results with me too. People are getting results with her. And yeah, I have seen and experienced, more importantly, coaches who do seem to be, like when you get those calls from telemarketers and you just know that they're just reading off a script and there's no real energy to it.
Yes, Mr. Ball. Thank you. I understand. Thank you so much.
I've experienced that from other coaches.
Really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I have. Now, say few and far between, but I certainly have, and I don't like it myself. So I know that some of my take on this is my own preference and my resistance to people who coach badly with just a framework, and it doesn't really feel like they're actually listening to what you say. They're just looking to get you to the next point on the framework. I don't like that. So I think there has to be some middle ground, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like if you're just going to sit there and read off a series of questions to somebody, well, then they don't really need a coach. That's not coaching. That's school time in third grade. I'm going to tell you what to do step by step by step, or we're going to talk about it. I think the idea of following the framework is good because I've used other frameworks, but I don't feel like they were as comprehensive as this one. So this one, I choose to use it because I feel like it covers a person holistically. But at the end of it, it is still up to me to do the deeper digging. And something that you said brought this to mind for me. You need to be in the moment as a coach, but you also need to be able to have that bird's eye view and see how this, like, how's it going? And I think when somebody gets super focused on a framework, they lose that other piece of observing, if you will, what's actually going on in their session.
When you say framework, though, is it to the point where in your own private coaching, you know what session one's going to be about, you know what session two is going to be about, is
Mhm.
like that kind of formula that you pretty much know what you're working on each session?
So topics. I know specific topics. They may not necessarily like work. Oh, this is going to be module one or session one or whatever you want to call it. I do start with hey, this is our first meeting. This is our first session. These are the things we're going to be talking about throughout the process. But today's topic is, and again, it's hard to imagine without knowing what it is, but the way that it is put together is super, it really took the guesswork out of it. So honestly, if you suck as a coach, you could really utilize this framework and be a pretty good coach. But I think the best experiences that I've observed using this particular framework is when you use the topic, but then take that and springboard from it and do the deeper dive.
Yeah. We were briefly talking before we hit record today about, well, I was anyway, about the possibility of AI coaches. And that this is something that already exists. And I would say this, that if you are purely formula coach and you just like go through the process, you read the stuff out and you work through that, and you're not really intuitive or tuned into your clients or connected in those kinds of important ways, you might as well be an AI coach, and you will probably be just as effectively replaced by one, because the AI coach can still go through that.
Yes. Oh my God.
This may be hard news for some of our listeners, right?
It really may be. But I'm sorry for just bursting out and laughing. But first of all, you just delivered that with such tact. It's like, well, you might as well be replaced by one. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like that's pretty bad. Just saying. I'm sorry.
But am I wrong? Am I wrong?
Oh, but you're not. I agree with you. I feel like there's that human connection that you need to be able to connect with people and build a rapport
Yeah,
and trust.
this is why ultimately coaches can't really be replaced if you are coaching in that kind of way, and you're not just like, oh, I have my list of questions, I have my process to take you through, and control yourself, Angie.
I
Take a
can't.
deep,
I'm trying
take a
not
deep,
to.
take a deep cleansing breath, right? But
Oh,
but it is important because
yeah,
we want to make sure we're going to have clients in the future, and that connection with your client is really important. And to show that you're listening, you're tuned into them, you're paying
sure.
attention. I see the value of frameworks. I just don't think they should be ever stuck too rigidly. We need to have
Yeah,
flexibility. Guys, this has been a theme for me today, talking about improv. But improv is the ability to improvise is really important, and to be able to go where you need to go when you need to go there. Because there are times, I'm sure you've had these experiences as well, where unexpected things come up on your calls. And if you're not really prepared for those or able to
uh,
deal with stuff that
mhm.
is outside of the scope of what you were planning for the session, you're gonna come unstuck. Now, I would say I had this happen to me in my very early days as a coach, and I didn't know how to handle it. Now I would. But what do you do if someone gets super emotional in the middle of a session, or somebody actually starts yelling at you in the middle of a session? Well,
Like,
it's like
no, I'm sorry, I wouldn't do that.
you're going to have to go somewhere that you probably didn't plan on, and you have to deviate from what you were expecting to do. So we do need to have that ability to be somewhat flexible and go where we need to
Great.
go.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but think about it also on the flip side. I have been in sessions, even at this point in my career, after doing this for so long, I've been in a position, it doesn't happen often, But sometimes, you know what? Sometimes somebody's so stuck and you don't know how to get them out. And that is where that framework could be of benefit, right? Because keep on top, like a reminder, what's the topic really about today? Is it about this? Is it about this? How do I get them back to that place or at least a piece of the framework? So on the other hand, it could be beneficial if you become stuck with a client. I mean, have you ever been in a session, and I know what the answer is, so don't try and fib, but have you ever been in a session where you're like, gosh, I don't know, is it them? Is it me? Like, what is going on today? This is not working. They're stuck. I'm falling into stuckness with them, and I'm not really sure where to go. Have you had that happen?
Just yesterday.
Oh, well, already then.
Yeah, of course, it does happen. And when you tend to analyze after a call, I do anyway. Think, what was
Yeah.
that about? What was going on there? Because the rapport really wasn't there. And I felt like there was even skepticism from the client and that wasn't clearly coming through. Like there was certainly a lack of commitment. It was a very disconnected call in many ways, as much as that sounds paradoxical, but we just weren't quite connecting together. There was no friendliness to it. There was certainly no warmth. It was kind of like, just give me facts here. Tell them, yeah, very, very dry.
Meaning from the expectation of the client, that their expectation was, but they wanted it to keep it a little bit more, they didn't want to connect with you. They just wanted the facts.
I felt like that after the call, like there was a lack of trust there. And that's something that, if we work with this client, this was like a one-off, one of our one-off situation clients, that maybe if we come back and work together again in the future, that's something I might have to address because I don't want to have that situation. But generally in my private coaching, that doesn't happen much. Sometimes what happens more is that there's something that I start to notice that they don't want to deal with. And that's where stuff can start to come up and get awkward. And that's obviously where I'm going to go into and say, I'm kind of noticing something here.
Yeah. But then sometimes we just have to when that starts to happen and we find a client that's falling into that avoidance situation, we obviously have to maybe take that step back because we know the harder we push, the further away they're going to run or the faster they're going to run. But again, like I think when it comes to it, we do need to have some intuition. We need to be able to read people to some degree. Again, no crystal ball or anything like that. Having an intuition, listening. And you said in the beginning, and I love this. I say this all the time. You're not just listening to what they are saying. You're listening for patterns of things they might say. And you're also listening for what's not being said. And you're sitting there going, wait a minute. We just went from A to M. And we forgot everything in the middle. Now, honor them, let them speak, and then come back and say, excuse me, what about B? Right? So that's the beauty of, okay, I have the freedom within that session to address pretty much anything I choose. So yeah, and I think that coaches that are, and that are so specific, I actually am just having a memory. There was a company I worked for where I actually used to help. I was a coach, but I used to help train the other coaches. And there were just some people who were like very intuitive, like very relatable that I interacted with. And I thought, wow, they're going to be a great coach. Because there was a framework, they were like, I don't know, think about a bowling alley when you take small children and they put the bumpers up so you can never get a gutter ball, right? It was like they were staying in the lane, but they were just bouncing, like they didn't really know how to like let those barriers or break those barriers down because they were so focused on the framework. And guess what? They didn't make it as coaches. They just didn't get hired. So I can see how that can be a challenge and how it can definitely make a session super ineffective. Super ineffective.
If we look at it from, and we have brought this up before on sessions, but if we look at it from perhaps the the ICF point of view of that coaching really is just about asking questions and ontological coaching, which means we should never be consulting in a consultancy position. We should never be advising or mentoring. Only ever pure coaching, asking questions, let them bring the answers out. That's very hard to work with a formula then. You really do have to be completely intuitive about where you're going to go with your questions. You absolutely have to be listening to your client. I wonder, I've never done pure ontological coaching like that, but maybe you have, but I've never had that situation of coming onto a call and like, well, what are we going to talk about?
Well, I think, listen, I'm going to say this. I have had coaches, right, in the past, and I've had coaches I had actually a coach that was amazing. I love him. Shame on you, John. His name was John as well, for retiring. But anyway, I've been coached by some really high level credentialed people that had great reviews, and they get on a call and go, okay, so tell me what's going on. All right, I'll tell you what's going on, I guess, right? What have you done since we last saw each other, since we last met? Oh, I did this. I'm going to say that 90% of the time, the follow-up was so poor that I ended up leading my own coaching session. And I'm like, okay, this is wrong. This is a little bit backwards because they are not connecting to me. They're not. They're focused on whatever it is they're supposed to be saying to me. And they're not listening to me. So I think, when we talk about what traits, I know this is like a whole different thing, but I'm just saying, like, the traits that make up a great coach, it's one of them is deep present listening, right? And not just listening to listen for the sake of it, but like to start putting this picture together, right? This puzzle, if you will. And I think when you're stuck in a framework, you're only going to maybe put around the edges. That's kind of what I think it comes down to. But I'm actually recalling a couple of those experiences and saying, I wasted a lot of money. I paid a lot of money to not be coached very well because there was nothing. I was like, well, don't you want to know this? I was really like, don't you want to know why maybe I was avoiding that? Why my productivity is down? Like, we should talk about that. Nope, they had no idea what to do next.
I think that's one of the things that can come up as being beneficial about coaching when you do have a process, some kind of process to work through. Like, you actually get a chance to come up with stuff, even if from one particular session it's like, well, maybe there's something there that isn't directly related today. May come up today or may come up in another session, but we're giving things the opportunity to flow and to fly through. It does depend on the kind of coaching you're offering, the results that you're aiming to get with people. Now, if I'm coaching someone on being able to deliver amazing presentations from the platform, I don't really want to be getting into like their family relationships or how they're, why they're single and can't find someone else. It's like, that's not the kind of coaching that I'm there. These are examples that I've had as well. So, but that's not really the kind of coaching that I'm there for. And I don't want to be getting into that with them either. If I wanted that, I would have become a relationship coach. And I'm not, and I don't want to be.
Interesting though. I'm gonna jump in for a second because I've been hired by people in the past, professionals. They were professionals, and this is what's jumping out at me at the moment, where they've been like, Angie, this is our second or third session, and I'm a little confused. Like, aren't you gonna tell me like what to do with my business or what I should do as a leader? And like, they wanted a consultant. They did not want a coach, and there is, which we've talked about. There is a difference. So, that kind of puts you in a weird space. And I'm going to say this, my experience, and I've had, I don't know how many clients, hundreds of clients to the tune of thousands upon thousands of hours of coaching. And if somebody comes to me with a business challenge, unless it's like a very specific, get me from here to here in this particular space, 95% of the time, what's happening personally or professionally is happening because of personal space. So I think that's why I chose the framework that I use, because it actually helps dive into all of those spaces and treats them holistically rather than it's just that. And I think that's where maybe there's that fine line of make sure you know, I'm going to say this, make sure you know what the person is actually looking for, because they literally might just be looking for a business consultant where you do like tease through ideas and things like that and say, yeah, that's good. Go with that. I don't do that as a coach. I don't
Yeah.
say that's good. That's not good. I say, hey, see how it works. That's the difference.
Yeah, to talk things over. Yeah, I'm not a I'll try that again. I'm not a prescriptive coach in that sense, except when the coaching is to a specific outcome that I'm able to get to. I'm going to be guiding them and to some degree mentoring them. It's a very specific coaching offering. But I still do some general coaching, some other kinds of coaching as well, that business and otherwise, not so often now. But I do find it's amazing how much stuff can come up with that. It does depend on the person. You do have to meet them where they're at. That's how I ended up, I think, spending a whole call talking about one guy's what was it? Erectile dysfunction for a whole call. Not my favorite topic, and certainly nothing. There's something I don't know very much about.
Well,
What am I really?
well,
What am I really? What am I really able to offer on a call like that? But he did at least explain perhaps what was behind some of the stuff that was going on for him. But certainly not saying like, what should I do about this? And I was like, yeah, I'm not a doctor, not a medical consultant. Have very little for you here.
listen, I'm so sorry. I'm actually quite giddy today, which is really strange, right? I'm not usually so giddy. Although John usually does, he makes me laugh a lot, just the way he delivers certain things. But as he was saying,
You know it.
I'm thinking, oh my goodness, is he going to say erectile dysfunction? And he did. And then he had the nerve, listeners, to say, not something that I have, much knowledge about. Listen to his bragging today. If you could see what we look like right now, the time I'm covering my mouth in laughter today, it's just horrible. Anyway, but this is good information. I think that there's expectation. And I think maybe that is how you decide how to handle a particular client, perhaps, is understanding what it is that they're looking for and looking to gain, and allowing some flexibility, even if you are following a process. You have to think about it.
Yeah.
However you approach coaching, whatever type of coach you decide you want to be, when you are having that initial conversation with somebody and they're telling you, and hopefully you're doing this, by the way, and they're telling you what they'd like to see as an outcome or where they've been stuck and for how long, hopefully you're looking at it and saying, okay, is what I do a good platform for this person? Is this going to be back to the good fit? Because if somebody's, I just need somebody to go with the flow and really understand me. I've had coaches before and they never listened. And you are somebody who follows a specific framework to almost the letter, you may not be a good fit for this person. You're not going to help them and probably not have a great experience with them.
Yeah.
I
mean, to some degree, we're often going to find ourselves in that situation where we've developed a level of trust with someone where they want to share sometimes intimate details of their lives. Certainly, if they don't have anyone that they feel that close to in their own lives, they maybe are going to want to share it with you. You still need to keep your calls on track as best you can. You can't ignore it or pretend they haven't said it. You need to address it, but it may not be something that you even really can go into with them. But there may also be, like, if you have those structures, I always think there's still things from my early days of coaching that I may go back and use as tools sometimes, even from, not using very much stuff from NLP trainings or various books I've read that comes into my coaching practice at various times. But as and when they're needed, it's why it's good to have those things. There's tools in your tool belt. But I do not generally do well with rigid coaching. I want some kind of structure, and I work very well within a loose structure where I can really tune into people, have the relationship and trust, and get into the issues. It's a fun topic.
So I think I think we agree on that. I think that there really is, my feeling is there should be a good blend of that, just because having one or two sessions that aren't, like, air quote planned is fine. But when you're doing X amount of sessions with somebody, and it's week after week, or whatever the period of time is, that how often you do them, how you do the sessions, like, you have to think about, what is it like to get into those sessions week after week or session after session and keeping it impactful? That's the really big question. So it doesn't become redundant, and it still always remains challenging. But I think to some degree, you and I definitely agree that
Yeah,
there
for the
should be
most part, yeah.
something.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, we mentioned being taken over by AI. Well, we now have the ability to have AI voices for our podcast. So perhaps we'll do an episode that's just going to be AI and see how people feel. Well,
Oh
maybe
my
we'll stick to that,
gosh.
but we could do it. Next time, I think we'll talk about those traits that make a great coach. So you brought it up on the call today. I think it would be a great topic for our next call. So come and
Yeah.
join us if you'd like to hear some more about that. And do leave us a message, speakpipe.com/the coaching clinic podcast. Speakpipe.com/the coaching clinic podcast. The link's in the show notes. You can leave us a message, leave us a voicemail with your questions, comments, any feedback you have for the show. Tell us how wonderful we are, how gorgeous Angie looks today, all those kinds of things. And we'll look forward to hearing from you. And if we like your message, we'll feature you on the show. But we'll be back again with another episode very soon.
Yeah,
So see you then.
we'd love to hear from you.
See you soon, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. But I'm waving. I'm waving. Hello, audio show.
Oh, you're still recording?